Strait of Hormuz, 40 kilometers south of Bandar Abbas, Iran, 2:15 in the afternoon. 18 U.S. Navy F/A-18 Super Hornet pilots from carrier Air Wing 8 were flying combat air patrol 80 kilometers north of the USS Gerald R. Ford carrier strike group. On 3 Iranian air bases 190 kilometers away, 64 Iranian Air Force fighters were fully armed and taxiing for takeoff. Iran had one goal: sink the Ford before U.S. Navy defenses could stop them. The Strait of Hormuz is 54 kilometers wide at its narrowest point. More than 20% of the world's oil passes through it every single day. Iran had declared that any U.S. carrier moving through the strait would not reach the other side. The USS Gerald R. Ford was moving through it at 14 knots anyway, flanked by 6 escort ships. 2 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers held positions 8 kilometers to the carrier's north and south. Iran's commanders had spent 9 years studying the Ford's layered defense systems. They believed a 64-jet simultaneous attack from 3 directions would exceed the ship's ability to intercept everything at once. The strike group commander split air defense into 4 elements. Alpha was the 18 Super Hornets already airborne on combat patrol. Bravo was 12 additional FA-18S on 5-minute alert on the Ford's deck. Charlie was ship-launched missile defense, 96 SM-2 and SM-6 missiles loaded across 4 destroyers. Delta was last resort close-in defense, 3 Phalanx CIWS systems, and 2 RIM-116 ram launchers mounted on the Ford's hull. Every layer would be needed. At 2:17, the lead destroyer's radar picked up 64 contacts lifting off simultaneously from 3 Iranian air bases. The tracks split into 3 inbound corridors from the north, east, and southeast, and all 64 Iranian Air Force jets were heading for the strike group in a converging attack. The strike group commander transmitted one order to Alpha Element: engage immediately. The 18 Super Hornets turned north at full power and pushed to intercept range. Each pilot carried 4 AIM-120 AMRAAM missiles and 2 AIM-9X Sidewinders. At 2:22, Alpha Element was 110 kilometers from the Ford and in position. The lead pilot locked the first target and fired. 11 seconds later, an Iranian Su-24 went down 97 kilometers away. The Strait of Hormuz had become a live combat zone. Alpha Element fired 34 AIM-120 AMRAAMs in the first 6 minutes of contact. 27 Iranian aircraft were destroyed. The remaining 37 Iranian fighters broke formation and dropped to 150 meters above the water to cut below the radar horizon. 19 of them launched their C-802 anti-ship missiles from 60 kilometers out before the U.S. Navy intercept reached them. The 19 missiles went active and streaked toward the strike group at 320 meters per second. At 2:31, Charlie Element came online. The lead destroyer fired 8 SM-2 missiles in 4 seconds. The second destroyer followed with 6 SM-6 immediately after. The SM-6 climbed to altitude, turned, and dove down into the inbound C-802 missiles from above. 11 C-802s were destroyed before they crossed 30 kilometers. 8 C-802s were still running. Bravo Element launched from the Ford at 2:35. The 12 additional FA-18 Super Hornets cleared the deck in 4 minutes and turned toward the remaining Iranian jets. At 2:40, Bravo Element closed to within 3 kilometers and fired 18 AIM-9X Sidewinders. 14 more Iranian aircraft went down. The remaining 23 Iranian Air Force fighters held course and kept pushing toward the strike group. By the 30-minute mark, Iranian forces had already lost 41 aircraft. Their 8 inbound C-802 missiles were now 12 kilometers from the Ford. The Delta Element activated all 3 Phalanx CIWS systems at 2:51. The barrels spun to 4,500 rounds per minute in 4 seconds. The first C-802 entered the kill envelope at 2 kilometers. 4 missiles were shredded in 7 seconds. The 2 RIM-116 RAM launchers fired and destroyed 2 more. 2 C-802s were still flying. The first C-802 hit the USS Lady Gulf at 2:56 on the port side. The warhead detonated inside the hull just above the waterline. It killed 6 sailors instantly and wounded 14 more. It destroyed 1 radar array and knocked out 1 forward missile launcher. The Lady Gulf was badly hurt. It was not finished. The second C-802 hit the water 18 meters short of the Ford's hull. The warhead detonated on surface impact. Shrapnel raked the flight deck and wounded 3 deck crew. No aircraft were destroyed. The Ford did not slow down. At 3:01, the 23 remaining Iranian Air Force fighters pushed in from 2 directions. Bravo element cut north. Alpha element cut east. Both formations met the Iranian jets 80 kilometers from the Ford simultaneously. U.S. Navy pilots fired 22 AIM-120 AMRAAMs in a coordinated salvo at 3:08. 16 Iranian jets were destroyed in 90 seconds. The remaining 7 scattered. 4 launched their last missiles before breaking off. The Ford's RIM-116 RAM system destroyed all 4 missiles in 11 seconds. By the 1-hour mark, the Iranian Air Force had lost 57 aircraft. 7 jets were retreating north at full speed. The strait above 500 meters was clear. An Alpha element spent the next 20 minutes sweeping the airspace for any surviving threats. Bravo element refueled from the Ford's deck in rotation, keeping 8 jets airborne at all times. At 3:22, the Lady Gulf's backup radar came online. The ship was damaged but back in the fight. At 3:30, 2 Iranian fast attack boats came out of a cove on the northern coast at 38 knots. Each boat carried 4 C-802 missiles and was running straight for the strike group's port side. Both the USS Normandy tracked both and opened fire with its 5-inch deck gun at 3:34. The first boat took a direct hit 9 kilometers out and stopped dead. The second boat launched 2 C-802 missiles before a second round destroyed it. Charlie element fired 2 SM-2 missiles and knocked down both incoming missiles at 4 kilometers. Both Iranian fast attack boats were sunk by 3:46. At 4 o'clock, Iranian radar stations on the northern shore locked onto U.S. Navy destroyers with fire control radar. 2 destroyers detected the active lock signals. They fired 4 AGM-84 Harpoon missiles at the Iranian radar emitters 34 kilometers away. All 4 Harpoons hit within 90 seconds. The radar stations went permanently offline. At 4:15, 18 additional Iranian Air Force aircraft took off from Bandar Abbas and flew south. Alpha element turned to intercept. The Iranian jets reached the 40-kilometer boundary and held. They circled for 7 minutes, then they turned north and flew home without firing, though the window for a successful second strike had closed. At 4:42, Iranian surface-to-air missiles fired from the northern coast detonated near a U.S. Navy Super Hornet on patrol. Shrapnel cut through the left engine. The pilot held control, shut down the damaged engine, and diverted to a friendly airfield 140 kilometers away. He landed safely on one engine. The rest of Alpha element held position over the strike group without breaking. At 4:58, Hajjal, the strike group commander, declared the threat window closed. Every Iranian aircraft and vessel committed to the attack had been shot down, sunk, or driven back. The USS Gerald R. Ford and its 6 escort ships had passed through the full length of the Strait of Hormuz without losing a single vessel. The final count was confirmed at 5:15. 57 Iranian aircraft shot down. 4 additional aircraft too damaged to land safely, 2 of which crashed on attempted landings at their home bases. 2 Iranian fast attack boats destroyed. 4 coastal radar stations eliminated. 3 Iranian pilots recovered from the water by Iranian naval vessels. Not one aircraft from the 3 northern attack groups returned intact. The U.S. Navy recorded 6 killed and 20 wounded. The USS Lady Gulf sustained $42 million in hull, radar, and launcher damage and remained combat capable. The USS Gerald R. Ford sustained $5 million in flight deck shrapnel damage. 0 U.S. aircraft were lost. 0 ships were sunk. Iranian forces lost 61 aircraft confirmed destroyed, valued at more than $2.8 billion in total. 2 Iranian fast attack boats were destroyed at $14 million each. 4 radar stations were eliminated at an estimated $180 million replacement cost. Total Iranian losses exceeded $3.2 billion in a single 4-hour engagement. 87 Iranian aviators were confirmed killed. Iran had spent 9 years designing a strike package built specifically to overwhelm and sink the USS Gerald R. They had 64 aircraft, 3 attack corridors, fast boat support, and shore-based radar coverage all working at the same time. What they did not have was 30 U.S. Navy pilots, 4 warships, and layered missile systems all working in perfect coordination, ready to stop every threat Iran sent their way. The carrier Iran believed it could sink proved that a U.S. Navy strike group that is prepared and waiting cannot be broken by numbers alone.